Welcome to Mindful with Minaa, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well-being. I'm your host, Minaa B, a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self-awareness and self-efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, Mindful community? I'm back with another episode, and I am going to be talking to you about growing together in friendships. Friendship has been the theme on my heart lately, and it's something I see a lot of you are interested in learning about and hearing about. Episode 7 is still a very popular episode, which is signs you're in an emotionally abusive friendship. But episode 10 is also a very popular episode titled Making Space for Grief, Mourning the End of a Friendship. So I want to do things a little differently today, where I want to talk about what does it look like to actually grow together in a friendship and managing feelings of ambiguous loss as well as ambiguous grief in a friendship when you see the person that you've been friends with for years experiencing major life transitions that now impacts the state of your relationship. Recently, I was watching an episode of Insecure. I love to rewatch TV shows as a way to calm down my nervous system. And so this is like my 5th time watching Insecure, y'all. And there is an episode where the girls go on a girls' trip to Coachella to see Beyonce. And one of the friends, Tiffany, is pregnant. And I believe she's probably maybe around 5 to 6 months pregnant. So she is extremely pregnant, okay? And they go on this trip. So many wild things happen while they're on this trip. And there's a scene where Issa and Tiffany are in the car together. And Tiffany basically is just like, I feel like our friendship is different. And you can see in her face that she is experiencing a lot of sadness and grief as she is expressing herself to Issa about recognizing that, listen, my friendship with y'all has changed. Like, this is a big deal. I'm pregnant. And Issa responds and she's like, no, like things are the same. And we just wanted to have our last hurrah before the baby comes. And I was a little taken aback by that because if you have not watched the show or even this episode, they go to Coachella. And while they're at Coachella, I'm sure all of you know that Coachella is a festival. So people are out in a large field. There are no chairs. You have to sit on the lawn. You're in the heat because you're standing outside all day. And it's pretty much a party scene. And so in this episode, her friends are drinking, they're getting drunk, they're even encouraging Tiffany to have a sip, saying, you know, it's going to be okay for the baby. They're also getting high, using different drugs. And there's also a scene where Tiffany says, like, I had a nibble of an edible, please don't judge me. And so once all of the partying is over, it's the very next day where you have this scene where Issa and Tiffany are in the car. And Tiffany is just expressing herself and she's talking about how things are different. And Issa is trying to convince Tiffany and maybe convince herself that things are not different. And she's talking about wanting to have this last big party and this last big hurrah moment before the baby came. But there are a few things that I want to unpack from this particular scene. The first thing that came to mind is the acknowledgement that your friendship is changing. And the reason your friendship is changing is because the individual in this friendship is going through a major life change. They're going through a transition. So in this particular friendship with Tiffany and the other 3 girls, Tiffany is pregnant and she is the first person within her friend group to have a baby. And so it is natural that things are actually going to change because Tiffany is now bringing life into the world, and being a mother is going to require a lot of her. It's going to require her time. It is going to require her energy, and therefore it is going to shift the way she is able to show up in her friendships because she has a child that she now has to prioritize before her friends. And I think there are times where in our friendship, we see that there's this big life change happening in front of us, but we don't want to acknowledge it. And so we want to pretend that this big thing is not there in front of our face instead of acknowledging that things are going to look different when the baby comes, but things are already different now. And the reason why I feel like the girls struggled to acknowledge that Tiffany's life is already changing is the fact that you thought it was appropriate to go to Coachella and be in an environment where you can drink, get drunk, get high, and pretty much party at a level where you could get high and drunk and fail to recognize, is this actually an environment for a pregnant person? I believe that Tiffany herself probably wanted to keep up with her friends. But I think in that moment, the aftermath of the situation, since the night did not go the way they planned, in that car ride is when Tiffany realized, I can't keep up with this life. This is not sustainable. This is not realistic. And I think Issa on her end, by hearing her say like, no, things aren't the same. Things aren't going to be different. We just wanted to have our last hurrah. It's a failure to meet people where they are. It's a way of us sometimes avoiding the truth that is right in front of our face and trying to keep up with the lifestyle that we had before the transition without realizing the transition is already happening. What would it look like if they chose to have maybe a relaxing girls' weekend, a getaway somewhere where there was no requirement for Tiffany to be out in the field and the girls getting drunk and getting high and doing things that Tiffany could not really partake in? And so I think one of the things that we have to be willing to acknowledge in our friendships is the hurt and the grief that comes when we see a particular individual in our friend group changing, especially if it's because their life is changing. And in this particular example, Tiffany's life is changing because she's having a baby. And maybe you have experienced a shift in a friendship because you recognize this is your friend's first child. We never had to wonder about how does a baby interfere with us going to brunch on the weekends or going to see a movie or something as simple as being on a phone call with you with no interruptions. And now that you have a child, you may not be able to give me the same amount of time, energy, or attention. And that can feel like a form of loss. It can bring up something called ambiguous grief. And the reason why it's ambiguous because we generally talk about grief in the context of a tangible loss. So generally, if we're grieving the loss of someone, it's because they died. But ambiguous loss can also happen when someone is physically present but psychologically absent, or physically present but the nature of the relationship has changed. And so, yes, you're still in that friendship, but that friendship is completely different. And it's something that you're not familiar with because maybe you've been friends with this person for 5 years, 10 years, or even more, and you're used to engaging with this person in a certain way, on a certain level, and now a huge life change has come where after 10 years of doing things one particular way, you're realizing we can't do it that way anymore. We're going to have to shift things around because there's a major transition happening in this friendship. And so that is what I want to unpack today. I want you to be thinking about transitions that you have experienced in your friendships, or even transitions that your friend has experienced, and how that impacted the foundation of the relationship, how that impacted the nature of the relationship. Because in this example, I'm talking about a friend having a baby. And this is a very common thing where when a person is having a child, it can be really hard to navigate what's next in the friendship. How do we grow together? I hear so many stories where moms will say, once I got pregnant and had a baby, it seemed as if my friends abandoned me. It seemed as if they didn't know how to make space for me and my child. They either stopped inviting me places, or another thing that brings up so much pain is the fact that it felt as if my friend didn't really want much involvement with my child. And so that can be very painful when you are the friend who is experiencing the transition like a pregnancy, where this person who was always calling you and always wanting to hang out with you and always wanting to do things with you, now you have a child and you recognize in this friendship, my friend actually doesn't even pay my child attention. That's really, really painful to experience. Another thing might be I'm going through postpartum and my friend is not actually being supportive of my postpartum journey or even understanding of it. And on the other side of that, when you are the friend who is not necessarily experiencing a transition for yourself, but you're witnessing your friend experience the transition of maybe being pregnant, you will have to recognize there are certain needs that I have in this friendship that this particular friend may not be able to fulfill anymore. And so they filled this cup for me so much, but now they're having a baby. Now they're going through a major life transition. And so I might have to refocus my energy elsewhere because during this season, they may not be able to show up for me the way that they always have. And when we acknowledge that and make space for that, it allows us to grow together versus growing apart. Changes in life don't have to mean friendships disintegrating. For our relationships to thrive and satisfy us, we must be intentional and make an effort to grow together so that we can sustain that relationship and ensure that that relationship is still satisfying to the parties involved. If we're not willing to do the work of being intentional and putting in effort, we're going to end up having unsatisfying relationships. And we're also going to end up having relationships that feel imbalanced and relationships that don't feel nourishing. And it's really hard to thrive in a relationship if that relationship only depletes you, or if you feel like you are always the person who's being flexible, who's being understanding, who is providing and giving and being supportive. And so one of the things that we have to be mindful of is how can I learn to adapt to change in my friendships? Because the person that I met 10 years ago, it's unrealistic to believe that their life is going to remain the same forever. People are going to change. That is a big life transition in itself. Healing is a big life transition in itself. There are times where changes happen and it's not because something external took place. There are times where changes happen because something internal took place for a person, where their eyes opened and they realized that a lot of their suffering is debilitating to their life. And so they might now embark on a healing journey and their attitude might be a little different. Their needs might be a little different. They might set new boundaries. They might have new rules for the relationship. And it has nothing to do with external forces. It just has to do with internally, I'm a different person. Internally, I am evolving. I'm growing. I'm being mindful of my trauma. I am being mindful of what I need to heal. And that can also impact a friendship. So just remember, sometimes the transition is not just the things that happen externally, but there are certain things that do happen externally, like a pregnancy, or your friend moving to a different state, or your friend getting a new job that requires more of their time and their energy, your friend getting married or entering a new partnership. And the number one thing we have to do if we want to grow together in relationships is learn to adapt to change. So one of the things that we can be doing to learn to adapt to change is first acknowledging our feelings. Adapting to change does not mean pretending that you're okay. It does not mean minimizing or denying your emotions about the changes that are taking place in the friendship. You can't heal from something if you are denying the truth of a situation. The truth is, it's okay to feel sad if you are mourning the shift in a relationship. It is okay to feel angry or hurt or anxious when you recognize that there are changes happening in a friendship. Acknowledge what you feel. Stop trying to pretend you don't have those emotions, because let me tell you, by pretending you don't have the emotions that you have, it is going to manifest in your behavior. And so you want to be able to acknowledge this is what I'm feeling in the moment. And by acknowledging that, you can now ask yourself, so if I feel sadness, what do I need to do with this sadness? If I feel anxious, what do I need to do with this anxiety? It's literally like taking your emotion and picking it up with your hands and holding it in front of you and saying to yourself, this right here is the feeling of sadness. What do I do with it? How do I put it down? How do I shift it around so that I can be mindful of how this might impact my friendship with someone? And the reason why being mindful and open about what you feel is because the next thing that you want to do when it comes to experiencing transitions in a friendship is communicating how you feel. It is okay to tell your friend, I know you're planning for this move and I'm really going to miss you. I'm going to be really sad about the fact that you're going to be in a completely new state. I'm not going to be able to see you often. It is okay to express yourself and let your friends know how you feel because that actually brings meaning to the relationship. I hear so many stories where people go through transitions and because their friends don't communicate their emotions to each other, the person will sit there and think to themselves, I wonder if this friendship was even valuable to this person because they're acting as if they don't even care that I'm going through this major life transition. Sometimes there is intimacy to be found in expressing ourselves and communicating with the other person. This is the emotion that I have toward this particular circumstance. And I want to share it with you to figure out, is there a way that we can mitigate this? Now that you're moving or you're going to be having a baby, are there ways that we can still sustain our relationship in a way that is fruitful for the both of us? What can I be doing to support you as a new parent, or the fact that you might be having additional children? Or what can I do to support you as you go through this job transition, as you go through this move, or just experience this external shift? What can I be doing to support you? But I'm curious to know if you will be able to support me in this particular way, because these are the things that I need to feel nourished in this friendship. So, for example, we may not be able to talk on the phone every day the way that we used to, but can we at least connect via text more often? Or can we speak maybe once a week? Do you have the room in your schedule to plan for us to have phone calls? Can we maybe commit to at least seeing each other once a month? Us going on a coffee date or having brunch? Can we at least make that commitment? You have to know how to communicate, but the first step to communicating is acknowledging where you are, so that you can come to this friend and express yourself and say, based off some things that I'm feeling, one, I'm curious to know about how you're feeling, and two, what is the solution? How can you and I work together to create a solution on how we can continue to grow together and move forward in this friendship? That has to come from you just being honest about how you feel. Now, the next thing is when it comes to adapting to change, there is a big level of radical acceptance that you have to incorporate in this process, because change is change. It is going to happen whether you agree with it or not, whether you like it or not. And so adapting means to find new ways to open yourself up to things being different, because as people, we like familiarity. We like when things stay the same. And this is why transitions are so hard for us, because now you're saying, Dag, like I got to figure out how to now maintain this friendship with the baby involved, or I have to figure out how to maintain this friendship with you moving to a completely different state. I have to figure out how to fit myself into your life when you're about to get married or you're in a brand new relationship. Change is so hard because we like when things are the same. We don't like disruptions to our normalcy. And in most friendships, if you've been around someone for a very long time, when that major life transition comes, it's like a shock to you, because it's like, for 10 years, I haven't had to deal with this. And now, out of nowhere, I do. And so there's a big level of radical acceptance, which basically means learning to honor and embrace reality for what it is. And instead of taking reality personally, you honor reality for what it is, and you teach yourself how to accept it without trying to change it, without trying to attach negative stories to it, without trying to mold reality into the way you want reality to be. It is simply honoring, this is where we are. And what does it look like for me to open myself to something new in this relationship? And so when it comes to growing together, these are the critical things that I want you to be thinking about. One, have you done the work of being real with yourself and real with how you feel? Have you done the work of communicating to your friend and expressing to them things about the relationship that brings concern to you or you're afraid of, so that you can not only express your needs, but also inquiring with them, how does this transition feel for you? Remember, this is what community care is. It is about honoring how you feel, but also being in tune and attentive to the needs of others, even if they are the ones going through the transition. Because that friend who is getting the job promotion, that friend who is getting married, that friend who is in a relationship or having a new baby, they're having feelings about that too. They're not oblivious to the fact that their life is going to change, and they may struggle to talk about it too. And so just be open to expressing yourself with one another and honoring the situation that is at hand and acknowledging the truth that is in front of you. But the next thing you want to be asking yourself is, what can we both be doing to adapt and pay attention to the areas in our friendship that might need more nurturing, or the areas in our friendship where we just have to engage in radical acceptance and honor. This is how things are going to be moving forward. But the same way we were able to adapt to other changes that happened in our friendship, we can adapt to this as well. And so the number one thing you have to remember is that at the foundation of every relationship is trust, reciprocity, respect, and safety. And without those things, we're not going to see our friendships flourish, especially when our friendships are impacted by major life changes. And so I want you to be reflective and think about, how are you contributing to the longevity of a friendship? And the way that we contribute to the longevity of a friendship is to be intentional. It is to put in effort to recognize that friendships don't just grow because we know each other. They grow because we're willing to do the work of sustaining that friendship, of meeting each other's needs, of adapting, being flexible, but most importantly, respecting each other's journeys. And so my question to you is, if you are in a friendship that is important to you, what are you doing to make sure that you and your friends are growing together versus growing apart? That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform. Also, don't forget to share it with a friend and on social media. To stay connected with me and my work, follow me on social media and subscribe to the Mindful with Mina newsletter, which can be found on my website, www.minab.com. You can also continue learning from me by ordering my book, Owning Our Struggles, which is available at all major book retailers. Stay tuned for a new episode next week, and most importantly, remember to be present and stay mindful. Take care, and goodbye for now.